Hello, my name is Christi Scarrow, and welcome to Messy Leadership, where we talk about the hard stuff in managing people. And today I am excited to be talking to Tara Greenwood. She is the CFO at GoCold Solutions and a longtime friend of mine. So I'm happy for you to be here, Tara.
Thanks, Christy. Happy to be here.
So I always like to start with, rewinding back to the early days of our careers and getting a sense from you, the important lessons that you've learned that have helped shape who you are as a leader today.
I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned kind of early on was how to coach versus direct. So early on, I was promoted within a department where you sort of are the expert on everything. People come to you, you already know the answers. It's very easy to give direction. And after a little bit of time in that role, I was moved to a new department where I wasn't the expert. And it was a very big adjustment in terms of how to lead and manage people. So instead of knowing the answers and directing, I really had to learn how to trust the people that work for me, that they know what they're talking about. I had to learn how to listen to them and really ask questions. So it was a very different approach versus telling people to asking questions and getting the best out of them and helping them to figure out what needed to happen. And I think that was critical because you need that to grow in an organization and for future roles, take on new responsibilities.
I think that's a really hard transition for a lot of managers. I know it's something I personally struggle with and go back easily to that doer mode mindset that I try not to. What are some of your maybe go-to coaching questions or, ways in which you can get yourself into that coaching mindset?
I think it's asking why. And I think it's not being afraid to ask questions to understand. If you're really seeking to understand things, people are usually not defensive. They're open. They're willing to spend the time and explain it. And when you ask people why they think that or why they do it, often as you're talking through it, they realize for themselves, or you realize together sometimes that people are getting in their own way or putting their own obstacles up for things. So it's really about being open. It's asking questions with the intent to understand. And often it's them figuring out through that discussion.
Yeah, I think for me, the idea of coaching and as a coach myself, it's thinking about helping them get to their own solution on their own, as you said, which is I kind of want to say, let me just tell you what you need to do. And yet a good coach will help them discover it themselves.
Yeah, and that's very easy to do when you are the expert and you know. But when you don't, it actually forces you to go in that mindset because you don't know the answers already. You don't know what they're going to tell you. And it actually naturally forces you over to the way you should be coaching in theory.
Absolutely. So I know you're obviously a leader of leaders, which means you have others who have to manage people. And how do you help them through that transition?
I think when you first become a people manager, that is the biggest transition you're going to go through in your career. And realizing that being accountable for the work on your team doesn't mean that you do everything. So I think it's about observing what they're doing. I think it's about providing feedback. I think it's about an open dialogue where they're okay to come to you with where they're not comfortable and being open about it because nobody goes into it knowing exactly what needs to be done or how to manage people. It's a bit of a learning experience. It's a personal growth, and it's something that I think continues to evolve throughout your career. I don't think any leader has fully figured it out. It's something you're constantly working on.
And that's why I like to call it messy leadership, because I think Everyone I speak to, and myself included, is you're still trying to figure it out and the best way to do it, and then how do you motivate and inspire others. So it's not easy. So that leads me to my next question, which is, recognizing where you are today, what are some of the messy bits that are still challenging, and how have you tried to work through those?
I think it's very easy to manage or lead with people who are like yourself, who have a similar approach, who think the way you think, are motivated by the things that motivate you. So it's very easy to put yourself in someone like that's shoes and to work with them. I think where it's messier or takes a little more effort is when you're working with people who are very different than yourselves, who aren't necessarily motivated by the things that motivate you, who don't necessarily have the same style, don't approach things the same way. There's a lot of value to an organization of bringing people together with different styles, who have different thoughts, who challenge each other and ask questions to build out an idea. So I think in order to be successful, an organization needs to bring in people who think and act very differently. But I think as a leader, it's harder when people are very different to figure out how to approach that, how to best communicate to them and come to their level.
So I know you're newer in your role, and how have you, been able to start to do that process of figuring out what motivates them, what are their differences that you need to think about, or maybe what have you done in the past that has helped you?
Yeah. So it's interesting they bring that up because I am new in my role today and very much at that point working with a lot of new individuals within the organization. So sometimes it's as simple as asking people what's important to them, whether it's work hours or how they like to be recognized. It's observing how they respond to things, and it's about watching how they're interacting. So, as you're working with them, it's about reading their reactions to it. It's about open conversations about what's important, and it's about adjusting to that.
I'm wondering about just in general, then, what advice do you offer to those who are managing people or maybe struggling to manage others?
So I think leadership's not about one size fits all. I think it's really about getting comfortable with what your own authentic leadership style is. I mean, every organization, you see very different profiles who are successful. And it's about figuring out where you're strong and really leaning in with what you're good at and where you feel confident. And I think it's about being honest where you're not strong and honest with yourself and recognizing that that's probably not your biggest strength. And either it's something you want to develop a bit, or often sometimes it's just being aware and figuring out how you want to tackle it. And maybe it's about surrounding yourself with people who do have that strength, or even if you're on sometimes it's not even being a leader, but it's just being a member of a team. And when you're agreeing on roles, it's you're good at this, or I'm good at this. I'm not as good at this. So can you take that role? And really leaning in where you're strong and feeling confident in that.
Yeah, I think that's important to recognize that there's going to be times you don't feel confident and you're going to have things that need developing or things are not strong in yourself. And as you said, if you can find others to complement that or you can find ways to overcome that and focus on your strength, I think that's really powerful. So I'm going to add just one more question in here about because you touched briefly on culture, and I actually know knowing you, sort of your focus on just understanding a culture and probably creating the culture you want. And any little tips on as a leader how you can really influence the culture of an organization?
Influencing the culture is actually very challenging and very difficult because it's ingrained. So as a leader, I think it's important that you model the behaviors you want to see. If a leader walks the talk, then other people are going to follow. I think it's about looking at the kinds of behaviors you want to see and consciously choosing how you act, what behaviors you reward. You can say you want people to bring forward ideas no matter, how crazy they seem. And if when someone brings forward an idea, if don't reward that and put it forward, then you very quickly stop that behavior. So it's being very, very mindful, and it's recognizing and rewarding when people act within the culture that you're trying to create, aligning the reward system with that.
That's funny. I've seen that exact behavior where our leader's like, I don't understand why my team doesn't bring solutions to me. And then noticed whenever they did, he would shut them down. I'm like, I wonder. And you're right. I don't think sometimes you don't even know you're doing it potentially, but being aware of, are you actually walking the talk and doing what you say and recognizing and acknowledging when people are doing the things you want?
Well, it's interesting too, because a lot of companies are struggling with accountability and how to make accountability part of every day. And a lot of the organizations that I've seen that are focused on that see accountability as holding other people accountable. But if you want a culture of accountability, I think it's very important to recognize that accountability is a personal thing, and a true culture of accountability is where people take accountability for their own actions. So for sure, how you act and what you do is definitely drives the culture that you're trying to create.
You're speaking near and dear to my heart on that one because you probably know my passion for accountability, and I've been in sessions where everyone's like accountability sessions, like literally we're training on accountability, and they're like, well, management's not doing this and this person, and I'm like, what? Wait a second. This is
Yes.
actually supposed to be about what we own, what we do, what we control, not pointing fingers at everybody else. So I've certainly seen that show up as well.
Yeah. And for sure, the other thing is where people want to see people bring forward more decisions and things like that. But if you want to do it as a leader, you can't be always providing direction, right? It's if you're directing all the time, and if you're not rewarding people for coming forward with their own ideas, or if you're punishing people for doing something without asking, then they're not going to make decisions on their own, and they're going to constantly look for direction, and you're not going to get to that organization where people come forward with their ideas and recommendations and feel comfortable doing that. So
And that links very
awesome.
much back to what you talked about at the beginning, right? That idea of if you can learn the skill of coaching versus directing, you can bring that out of people with the right questions. So I love that.
Yes. Yes.
Any last thoughts, Tara, that you think are important to share with the folks listening?
No, I think really, we've had a lot of good conversations. I think the most important thing for anyone is to really figure out for yourself what is authentic and true to you and how to lean into that. And that is how you'll ultimately become, the best leader, the best version of your leadership version of yourself.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your insights that I know the managers, new managers, and existing managers can use. So, really appreciate it. Add to my listeners if you're looking for new ways to navigate the messy bits of leadership in your life. You can find links to helpful resources in the show notes or find me at christiscarrow.com. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you.